So hi guys, today I had a little bit of brief spare time, so I went down to Pett Level on the way to see my sister and my mum and dad. And the beach here is awesome, but the weather today was a little bit windy, a bit rough. And I think it was about 40 mile an hour, sort of constant wind. So the pressure on me, as a person just stood there, was trying to push me over quite a bit. As you can see, even the camera's being buffeted quite badly, even though it's stabilised. And as you can see there, the bird is even struggling to fly. It was definitely an interesting sort of half an hour or so that I was down on the beach. Pett Level is near Fairlight, and actually sort of in between Fairlight and Winchelsea, sort of on the way to Rye in East Sussex. And part of the old beach was actually a forest, so you can actually see when the tide is out, as you can see here, it was actually a forest, so you can actually see the trunks and some of the roots and things like that from the trees, which you'll see a couple of photos in a minute. But as you can see, the waves were, the tide was actually out, but it was coming, it turned, it was just coming in, so they were all over the place. And the photos, yeah, they're okay. The sun popped its head out a couple of times, but very, very briefly. So these shots are edited, but they're not tweaked too much. There was a lot of spray in the air, which actually, when you look at some of the photos, you think that's actually noise in the image, but it's actually not. It's just spray in the air. There's so much of it. My lens, the front sort of lens element, was constantly being wiped free from the mist. I was surprised actually this shot here that actually the camera managed to focus on the wind turbines there in the distance. I mean, they're probably about 4 or 5 miles away. As you can see there, the mist up and sort of around the cliff area. But it was an interesting morning. Quite glad I went down. It wasn't raining until I left actually, and the weather, as you can see there, the weather actually came in. Big dark, even sort of darker clouds. That shot's not even edited. That is literally as it came out of the camera. You can see how sort of moody it became, and it sort of appeared. This bird here, flying really, really low in between the waves. Amazing, really, watching them do it. I think it's called a cormorant, and I just spotted him. Just he was flying so low through the waves, you couldn't see him at all. Rx10 Mark IV locked onto him pretty quickly. A couple of shots, well, one shot you'll see it missed him completely. Didn't even focus on him. Don't know why. It decided to pick a wave instead. But it was a case of literally just aim the camera in the right direction. Didn't have much chance to swap around focus points or anything like that, or even turn on object tracking or anything like that. So also trying to not be buffeted by the wind at the same time. That shot there is out of focus. It didn't quite get him. It focused behind, so missed the bird completely and actually just focused in the distance. But the other shots, probably about 10 or 15, I think maybe 2 or 3 were out of focus. And this one he lifted up slightly, but then he sort of disappeared right down into the waves, and I couldn't see him after that. So he was actually below sort of where the waves were coming up. So he's flying. I don't know why they do that. Maybe it's just they feel safe or something. Not sure. This shot here, I have actually dehazed it, so actually I could hardly see those wind turbines at all. They were really in the spray and the mist. But as you can see there, that's when the sun came out. that's as good as it got. Rx10 Mark IV locking onto these birds really quick. There's a shot in a minute actually that it didn't lock on at all, but that was literally me finishing a slow motion video and going oh, and just aiming up, and literally it still took the shot, but it was completely not in focus. So yeah, it was shot at f4 600mm, and as you can see there, completely missed it there. It may have been actually in focus, but my shutter speed may have been too slow, and I was actually panning with them. So the fact that it may be in focus, but actually it's just blurred because of my movement and their movement. But I can't really tell, to be 100%. This shot here I quite like. Some rocks on the foreground, and then it was like a little island of sand, which was covered very quickly actually. Maybe 10 minutes it had gone completely. But it was quite a cool little feature of the beach there, and all the other bits around, you can see the black bits in the distance. That's all sort of tree trunks and things. But the Rx10 Mark IV, there you go. So there's actually a tree trunk there and some roots in the ground. You can see obviously the stones in between the water. But yeah, the Rx10 Mark IV performed brilliantly as always. Like I say, missed a couple of shots focus wise and user error, obviously not having the fast enough shutter speed. Shooting at ISO 400 on these because the light was pretty poor. It was pretty dull, but also needed to get the shutter speeds up to counteract any sort of wind buffeting. This shot here, seagull I believe, obviously banking past the cliff I think. I'm not sure unless it's going to land or something, I'm not sure. But the fact it focused into the distance, probably about half a mile down the road. Onto the slow motion stuff. So all these are shot at 500 frames per second, and I had manual control, but on a few of them I sort of made a few little mistakes. I didn't adjust the f-stop enough to give me enough depth. This is full speed, but as you can see it's not smooth because I'm literally just getting buffeted about by the wind, and it's literally just constant pressure, so you just literally like, it's just being pushed about basically. But yeah, once I got down and sat down on the stones where they're actually relatively dry, I could start doing stuff like this, which actually worked quite well. So it's all handheld. But the benefits obviously shooting at 500 frames per second, even if I'm moving around a bit or a little bit shaky, it's still quite smooth because your frame rate's so high. One of these birds, just about to take off. There's a few of them flying about. The seagulls seem to fly into the wind. These guys just go with it, and they get some serious speed. As you can see there, that shot f5.6. This is where the water came and almost got me wet. It just suddenly came in, and sort of it was time to retreat back onto the actual stones from the sort of the foresty floor. This bit here was quite cool, but then again, same sort of thing, just about to get wet. And that's shot in 4K. I have downscaled the video from 4K to 1080p just because the slow motion stuff isn't 4K. But as you can see there, it looks pretty good, even though the light was pretty awful. The sun did, like I say, the sun did pop out a couple of times. So these are full manual slow motion, so 500 frames per second, f5.6, ISO 400, at 1/500th of a second for the slow motion, for the shutter speed. Quite often you go higher, obviously, because it's a lot brighter, hopefully, when you're doing slow motion stuff. As you see, I haven't leveled all this up. This is me being buffeted and trying to lean into the wind, so I'm actually holding the camera badly. So user error there. So obviously trying to keep the horizon level, but at that point I wasn't really concentrated on that. This is quite cool. So this is the water coming in and out, but the wind is actually blowing along the beach. So when the bubbles and everything sort of, or the froth from the waves was sort of coming backwards and forwards, it looked quite sort of dreamy, I suppose. This is another one here. The waves crashing into the groins there, which is kind of cool. You can see the stones moving around a little bit there, which is kind of cool. Again, I'm not leveled it up. I've just left it as is. That one I made a little bit more of an effort. But literally, I'm just getting blown around all over the place. So trying to stay, level myself, and sort of worry about the camera later was that was my most common thing. Try not to get wet. So even though I was sat where I was there, sort of about 6 or 8 feet back from the waves where they're coming in, occasionally they come right up and I had to move again quickly. But looks quite cool. Just wish it was sunny. Unfortunately, it wasn't. It was like that. It was just grey and miserable. The sun did pop out a couple of times, and I really, unfortunately, I was right in the middle of this shot here. Huge plane, so I'm guessing it was like a bigger than a 747, one of the modern big passenger jets. Came so low above us. There was a guy walking his dog. We all sort of stopped and looked up, and we were like, "Whoa!" Right below the clouds. So I'm not sure why they were below the clouds, but I saw quite a few other planes flying lower. So if you know anything about flying, why would they all be lower than the clouds unless the wind is really bad up there, higher up? As you can see here, stones in the water, bits and pieces flying around. That's why you should never let yourself get hit by a wave, because there's quite a few stones and stuff in there. it could hurt. As you can see there, the waves sort of crashing and sort of spraying past. This one here I quite like, just because it's quite, even though the light's crap, just the way the water tumbles in and then sort of just disappears down through the stones. But this is just a day, just a half an hour, 45 minutes I had spare between work and seeing family, and I just popped down, got my completely blasted to bits, and so did the camera, but no issues at all. It did get a little bit wet, but I'm never that worried. So I gave a quick dry when I got back to the car, and this last shot here is just the car coming past because there's quite a lot of puddles on the side of the road, and there we go. So another day out with the RX10 Mark IV, but only obviously a very quick one, and in terrible light. So it just shows you it's still fine, it's still usable, and any worries, any noise issues, it's not a huge deal. You just tweak it slightly with Photoshop or whatever, 20%, and it normally cures any issues. And you don't lose much sharpness or anything like that. So anyway, guys, please subscribe, please click the notification bell, and apologies I haven't been putting any videos up recently. My PC died, so got a nice new one, custom built thing, and it's much faster, better for doing the video editing as well. So anyway, guys, I'll see you soon. Cheers.